Good morning, everybody. Melissa here, taking my morning walk with the belly butts. The belly butts, the belly butts. So, this morning I was listening to one of my favorite tarot card readers, and the reading for this morning started off talking about truth. And it's crazy because growing up, I come from a divorced family, so, we all have our issues, divorce, not divorce, whatever the case may be, but I came from a divorced family, so I spent time back and forth between my mom and my dad. And so for me growing up, I've always been a very sensitive, highly emotional person. And so growing up, it was very hard for me to communicate my feelings. And my dad and I used to do this thing where, like, if I wanted to talk about something, look at Bella, because she's more prettier to look at this morning. I didn't get really good sleep last night, so I'd rather show your pretty face. But we would do this thing where we would sit back to back and write notes. Like, I would write down what I would feel and I would pass it over my shoulder to him, and he would vice versa. And this was like our form of counseling therapy, and it really helped me at the time. But with my mom, she was more emotionally shut down, so I didn't have that with her. And it was really hard because she was always very defensive, and her emotions were very unsteady, so they would change a lot. Like, I was always felt like I was walking on eggshells, and I hated that feeling as a kid. And I'm not blaming my mom for anything. She did the best that she could with what she was given growing up. This is why I make these videos and talk, because this is like healing for me, and hopefully if anybody else can relate out there, maybe healing for you also. This is exactly why I do this. This isn't for blaming anybody for issues of my life or anything like that. This is all for me selfishly, but entail it could help other people to heal also. And I want to make that very clear. I spent a lot of years of my life people pleasing and not being honest with myself and not being honest with others. Not like maybe bold-faced lying, but not following what I wanted or needed in my heart, always giving to them what they wanted. And in the end, that hurts everybody, right? That hurts everybody. Who cares if I look tired this morning? It is what it is, right? So, yeah, I'm learning, and this is why I'm kind of like on this mission or expression, this truth expression of my life, like where I want to talk about the things that maybe were never talked about, so I could help heal through them, and not blaming anybody, but also in relationships, later on in my life when I started to develop relationships, not knowing, and me not being emotionally healed in these relationships. So they say hurt people, right? And that's very true. And you don't mean to. You may have the best intentions in the world, but bottom line is if your emotions aren't healed, you're going to end up probably hurting somebody else. And I'm realizing this, or I've realized this along the way. And instead of being honest, maybe when in a relationship, say something, you're having an argument with your significant other or whatever, and they say, oh, did you go to the grocery store? Because they got upset because you were going to maybe spend too much money, so they didn't want you to go. So instead of just saying, yeah, I did, you say no to avoid the fight. And then you're like, you justify, like, well, I was scared to say. And see, nobody should feel that way. Nobody should feel scared to express any type of truth in their life. And this is what I've realized, is that I was sitting here people pleasing and trying to make everybody happy all the time, and losing myself in the process, but making these relationships unstable because I was unstable. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that I see this now. I mean, it's just like when in recovery, when you're going through, like, if you're a recovering addict like I am, you realize that the first step of the process is admitting that you have a problem, right? And that's like the hardest. Well, like, same thing with healing. Nobody tells you, like, that when you're trying to heal your heart and your soul and help others, that, yeah, it's a great, wonderful thing. It's going to help you in the long run, but going through it, holy shit, nobody tells you how bad it's going to hurt, right? And it's not even so much about the old emotions coming up that hurt. It's the transformation of becoming a new person, because it's like when you are operating in survival mode for years and years and years, or you're operating in people-pleasing mode for years and years and years, and now you start to recognize your own toxic patterns. That's what's hard, is the changing that person. And when you really want to heal, you think, yeah, I'll sign up for it, it's good for me, right? Just like dieting, right? But then along the journey, it's very hard, right? To stay motivated, to stay focused on eating the good foods. Same thing with the healing journey. That's another thing. Nobody really, people do need to speak about it more, is that when you're going through it, it's like, nobody tells you when you're making these changes how hard that's going to be on your mind, body, and soul. And then it's like a caterpillar, like you're going into a cocoon, right? And you're figuring all this stuff out, and you're like weeding through all the gunk to break through. But you got to weed through all the gunk to break through, right? But you got to I also learned, like, the word emotion. Let's break it down. Emotion. E stands for energy, hyphen motion. So we're all energy and motion, right? Same thing with our feelings. So it's like we need to not sit and dwell and ruminate on the same thing over and over and over again. We need to process it, pass it, and push forward, right? Not bury it. That's the difference, is that, like, a lot of times what we do is instead of feeling that emotion for what it's worth, good, bad, the ugly, all of it, we don't want to. We want to be comfortable as humans, right? So we bury it. We bury it way, 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 way deep. And then we wonder why we have shoulder pain, or we wonder why we have this ailment starting here or there. Well, gee, we stuffed down all these emotions instead of feeling them, processing, and then putting them back into the universe. That's like, look, like right now, look at, I'm walking. It's not cold, but I got my, the ground's not totally warm, but I'm grounding. I'm grounding my energy. I'm giving the energy, all the negative energy in my body, back to the universe so it can transmute it back into positive energy, because that's what I want to keep in my soul. And sometimes when we have relationships with another person, we may jump into it a little too fast. I know that is another one of my issues, is I fall in love fast, and I fall in love fast and hard, and I give it my all. And then you get lost in the other person, because I had all this other stuff that I never healed from my previous relationships, or family, love, whatever. Everything is energy. So when we put our energy into any type of a relationship, whether it be with a significant other, a loved one, a husband, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, or our children even, and that's another thing. We have to respect each other's energy. We have to respect that maybe sometimes this person isn't on the same level as we are in our healing journey, or they're not even in the process of it, or they don't understand it. And that was another thing was with me. I always want to help. I always have. Like I've said before, I was that kid that was yelling at the other kids for killing the freaking ants, because I'm like, well, they're not doing anything to you. Why you want to sit there and kill them? Like, what the hell? Like, that's just so freaking wrong. And I get so caught up in wanting to help others and help people that if they're not ready or they don't know how, I take that personally, you know, or I don't want to give up because I feel like, no, I see the good in everybody, right? When we see the good in everybody and we think we can help or change them, not realizing or having to realize that the only person that can change them is themselves, and they have to be ready to do it, you know, and it's okay. And that's another thing, is like any way that I've acted in the past, any of my mistakes that I made, or I don't want to call it mistakes, learning lessons that I've gone through, or if I have hurt other people's feelings unintentionally. Bella, come on, this way, baby, this way. Now I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, I just, we need to know that if we have, God damn it, this dog finds food everywhere. She makes me so upset, and these people, oh, come on, baby. Sorry about that. But we just know that we shouldn't feel like that we have to change the way we need to act, or we shouldn't have to feel that we need to watch the things that we need to say around certain people because of the way that they're going to react. Nobody's in charge of my reactions and the things that I say or do but me. Nobody. Can't blame anybody for that, not even in relationships. I don't blame anybody for anything that went good or bad in relationships. I'm in charge of me. I'm in charge of my actions. That's it. Period. The end. And I have to understand, and we have to understand that sometimes not everybody realizes that. Sometimes people blame others for the way that they acted because they're not ready to recognize the truth in themselves. And that's really what it boils down to. I know that I went through a huge period of my life people pleasing and not being completely honest and with people because I was so scared of the way that they were going to react, because from a young age I was made to feel responsible for people's reactions. And so I took that with me in my adult life, and there's no blame there at my parents. Everybody did the best that they could on their journey, and I wish everybody the best in that way. No bad intentions, no ill words. And I hope that everybody else out there can relate and understand what I'm saying to some extent, because we all deserve to feel completely peaceful and free inside of our souls, regardless of if we're with somebody in a relationship or not. Nobody should make you feel controlled or bad for the decisions that you make, even if you make a wrong decision. Because who's to say that it is wrong in other people's eyes? And if you are invested in a relationship and you do make a poor choice or a poor decision, that relationship should be strong enough, that love should be strong enough that that person could be there for you and embrace you and say, we will get through this together, instead of making you feel bad because they acted in a poor way because of your decision. That's just not right. That's not how it should be. And I wish everybody, because I have to go because this dog is really pulling me now because there's squirrels everywhere. She's like going crazy over them. They're all up in the trees. We're no baby squirrels. You leave those babies alone. You baby. My father-in-law keeps feeding her, and she keeps getting fatter and fatter, and it's really aggravating because now we go on walks, and I can't even walk her without her finding some freaking scrap of food everywhere, because she's like a poor begging dog now that never gets fed. Like, it's just ridiculous. That's what I mean right there. Can't control this person's behavior. That person's behavior will never change. It hasn't changed in over a decade, and I have to accept that. I have to accept that there's nothing I could do about it. There's nothing I could do to change it, to get him to stop feeding her. Nothing. My kids either, the more you tell him to stop, the more he likes to do it. There's people out there in this world that actually get off on other people's pain. It makes them feel superior. Okay? Just remember that. And everybody have a great, blessed day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, Bill.